how we imagine the worst case scenario. What if we imagine the opposite? What if we imagine the possibilities?
Welcome back to the channel. We have a super special guest with us today. We have Dr. Liz Aguirre. She's a physician, she's a speaker. She just delivered her second TEDx talk, which is meant for you, to motivate you, and to give you the information that you need to improve your life. We're going to hear about her story, which I have heard parts of, and it's absolutely incredible and part of her TEDx journey. And so thank you so much, Dr. Aguirre, for being here today.
I'm just so happy for the things that you are doing and other people that share the mindset that we really need to start talking about these things, so that we can help others that just don't see the possibilities. And so thank you for having me, and thank you for the work you do.
Absolutely. And I can't wait for people to hear your story and even things that happened recently. I'd love to hear, we were talking, you have family over, and I was asking you a little bit more about your family relationships, and you just gave me a great story that I'd love to share with our audience.
My in-laws all live very, very close to us. And, I was telling you that I joke that my husband's family is like the Flanders on The Simpsons. Like, we love each other, because that's literally how it is when we're all together. And we just have so much love, and there's never any fighting. And I even tell my kids, like, what we have as a family is very unique and very different from how most people live, and you need to understand that. But that's also why I'm so hard on you, and that's why we always prioritize family. But that hasn't always been the case. Mm-hmm. And that is a huge part of my journey. And we'll get into that, but we used to live an hour north of my in-laws. And, it would take an hour to get here, and then an hour to get further south to San Antonio, where my mom was. I grew up just south of San Antonio in Poteet. And before long, everybody is moving into Austin, and the drive got longer and longer and longer. And before long, a drive to my in-laws was an hour and 45 to 2 hours. And then to get to my mom's was another hour and a half to 2 hours. So what used to be a 2 hour and maybe 15-minute drive to all the way south ended up being 4 hours. So we were driving on the toll, and that's because we took the toll. So we were on the toll, and I looked over and I saw the ground clearing for the Tesla the big mega factory that they're building. And I told my husband, babe, we have to move now. Like, we can't wait. And he's like, really? Like, we would have totally stayed in Temple where we were, because we loved it there. But we were there for 9 years and never successful getting any of our family to move there. And all the times before, I had this limiting belief that I'll never find another job like this, and the hospital system I work for is great, and my last system, it was not like this. And every system has its pros and cons, and I certainly went through burnout in this system. But I threw that all out the window, and I told my husband, we have to move, and let's just see and have your mom watch the kids for a little bit and just tell her we need time to ourselves. And of course, she was happy to do that. And we literally went, found a neighborhood. Yep, that house looks good. Let's sign on it. We'll be back next week to pick out all the details. And that is how we made the decision to move. I didn't know if I was going to be able to keep my job. I didn't know if there was what I was going to be able to do. But I knew that I was not going to keep living out of fear, which is what I had done all the times before. And that's what drove all my decisions before. And so many of us have that same thing. Yeah. What if this happens? Or what if it doesn't work out the way I think? Or, and then other people will scare us too with their stories. And then you're like, oh, I don't want to chance that, right? And so I had no idea how it was going to work, but I have come full circle in my journey just to trust that it would work out. So
And it's important to hear when you made the decision, because I hit a rock bottom and then I had enough confidence that I couldn't make a choice that was wrong. I was like, okay, now that is the impetus I needed to make a huge life decision. But if we can get people where it's not a rock bottom, because that rock bottom was like critical, threatening rock bottom. But if you're at that state of like, I'm actually thinking really clear, and what I heard is your values are family first. So that helped to shape your decision. And how did you make that shift from living out of fear to making that decision?
Well, that kind of goes into my journey. So, the first time I just decided that my family was going to be the priority, I had my twins, are 10 now. I was in my first job post residency. I was working like a mad person. I did every third day was a 36-hour shift. And then I was working full days in between. It was just, well, it was just horrible. And when I went back from maternity leave, I went 3 days in a row with never seeing my beautiful baby twin girls. I left in the morning when they were asleep. I would get home when they were asleep, and I didn't see them. And this was my first week back from maternity leave. And so my hormones are still all crazy, and I was nursing. And I told my husband that third day, no matter what, do not put them to bed. I will be home to nurse them. I have not pumped. I need to be with them. And I was 15 minutes late. After I said, no matter what, I won't be late. I will be there. And like it is in a doctor's life, I felt like I didn't have a choice, and I had to go see what was up with this one last thing. And so I got home just 15 minutes late, and my husband is standing at the bottom of the stairs. And this always gets me emotional, so sorry, but he was standing there and my babies weren't with him. And I literally broke down and just started crying. I mean, I was literally bawling. And my husband just hugged me, and he's like, babe, I have told you over and over again, and I want you to hear me this time. You always have a choice. You don't have to do this. And I wiped my eyes off. I walked into my office and I typed up my letter of resignation like that. So that was my first turning point. And, of course, I got a lot of, no, we can work with it and we can make it better. And I was, I've been here for 4 years, and that promise has come over and over and over again for 4 years. And I can't do this anymore, because now there's more than just me at stake, right? And so that was the first time I chose my family. And in that moment, it was so painful that I just felt like there was no alternative. There was no way that I was going to live without seeing my babies. And then the second time, I was again at my next clinical position. And here, this is important for everybody. So we think that when we leave and we go to the next job, it'll be better, right? We think, oh, they have a cap. They don't make you to see. I was seeing 28 patients and then being on call accepting admissions before. And so then I went this one, and they're like, we cap at 18 and no overnight call, and we have a nocturnist, and your pager turns off at 8 o'clock. And I was like, this is amazing. And so then I get there in the group, there's a lot of grumbling and complaints about this. And I was like, yeah, these people are crazy. I would never complain about this. And I'm like, these people are crazy. They have no clue. Fast forward, 2.5 years later, I'm crashing and burning again. That was my second burnout. And then I asked my husband, have you ever heard of Tony Robbins? And he's like, oh, of course I have. Everybody knows who Tony Robbins is. And I was like, I've never heard of him. And he's like, I've mentioned him before. Why do you ask? And he was having his Unleash the Power Within conference, and he's like, you should go. And I was like, no way. There's no way I can go. I won't. Babe, you can trade. You can ask. I told myself no before anybody else could tell me no. Long story short, I went to that conference. I came back the very next day and went into my medical director's office and said, I'd like to leave this position. That was my next one. And again, I was it was so painful because by then I had had my third baby. My other babies would barricade the doors and would cling to my legs. And then I had this newborn baby that my husband's holding while I'm trying to get out the door. And so then that was the turning point again. And then the third time I was like, this keeps happening to me. I need to figure this out. And so I turned to Tony Robbins again. He encouraged you, this platform that I did, look for like-minded individuals. And long story short, I found coaching, which you completely understand. And coaching helped me understand, truly understand, how I was not seeing things objectively. And the funny thing is, my husband, anybody who listens to me knows I talk about my husband a lot, because what doesn't break you makes you stronger. And we certainly got stronger through our journey, and he has helped me so much. And it's funny because all the things that he's told me over the years, I was finally hearing. And when I stopped and I accepted them, my whole life changed. And that happened because of coaching.
Wow. And this is similar. We'll have to send people back to the Q&A we did for the TEDx journey, because we talk about you being open to landing your TEDx talks. And what I'm hearing in the story is, right, we're putting our head down. We're so busy. There's not enough time to do all the things. It's stressful. We can go into survival mode. There's more than we can handle in a human's life. And so it kind of closes us off because we have to protect what time is ours. But when we put ourselves into the driver's seat, it becomes a receptive vessel where it's like, then we're finally opening up to possibilities. And the difference in coaching often is we all think there's a scarcity mindset. We're full of limiting beliefs. But if we just break that cycle and say, what if? Could it be? And I'll share that similar to, again, what we were mentioning in the other episode was that it can take a rock bottom or a point where you lose someone to death before you make the change that you did. And that's my story. My story, I was a surgical resident in the military, and my ex-boyfriend called me because I was suicidal and I was not okay. And it was the first time I didn't answer his call because I was so darn tired. And I never got a chance. I still have his voicemail, because that pain of not being there for the one we love. And I look back on my whole life, and I had put my head down for so long and pushed every single person away because I thought it was a distraction from my end goal, which ended up being a career that wasn't in alignment with what I want to offer the world.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing your story and making those decisions, which sound, it's like, oh, I just made the decision. But I imagine in the moment it was, it was not a simple.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it came to like those very painful points in my life. And the key is, as you said, why do we wait into that point where we're at rock bottom? And that is because we have all these fears leading up to that point. And then all of a sudden we're in the place where what's next at that rock bottom level is way worse than any of the fears that we've had in the past. And that's what pushes that decision. But if we change our mindset and we start realizing that everything will work out, and take those I keep going back to my TED Talks because it's so relevant, and I hope you guys can hear, like, we don't put life on hold. Do you hear kids laughing in the background? It's because even though I had this, I'm like, I want our family to still be able to come, and it's important to live life and realize it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have to have a perfect podcast episode where you can't hear what's going on in the background. You're gonna see me on YouTube and you might see a kid or a dog jump up on me, and that's okay. But we have all these
big arms. Please.
We have all these fears thinking that things have to be a certain way. But when we open up our mind to the possibilities and allow ourselves to see something, differently, then it really changes things. And I gave a talk a while back, and one of my points was, it's easy to mistake my truth for the truth, right? Because the things that are in our mind They feel very, very true to us, but they're not necessarily the truth. For so long, I thought I did not have a choice. You do not understand. I do not want to ever go back to this situation and living in poverty like I did as a kid. And now I'm the breadwinner. My husband was a stay-at-home dad when I went and turned in my resignation from that second job the next day. I didn't know how it was going to work out, but I just knew we were going to figure it out because I was not going to pass up this entire life and my kids' entire childhood for this. And so we have to realize like life is really meant for us to live fully and hold our values close to us and embrace those and feel like it's okay to want those things. There is nothing wrong with it. And the fact that we're instead living for our jobs, that is what we need to change. We need to be out there in the workforce. We need to be physicians. And at the same token, we need to be us. And we need to have the things that are going to make us the best physicians possible. And so my first TED Talk is about the imagination, and it's talking about how we imagine the worst case scenario. What if we imagine the opposite? What if we imagine the possibilities? And we do not do that. And I still catch myself over and over again, just going down that pathway. And the key is catching yourself.
Yeah.
And that's why coaching is so good, because if I don't catch it, my coach catches it, my husband catches it, somebody is pointing it out to me, but now my mind is more open to accepting it. And before, years would go by, my husband trying to tell me and I wouldn't accept it. I was like, it's just not possible. Everything you want and desire is possible.
And even like the point of, so when you have your life and your life experiences that shaped you, and we can go in, you tell you little bit about your story. You were saying growing up in poverty and how our society shapes the lens that from which we see. And when I made a decision, I look back and I asked myself, why? Where did I get this? Even in medicine, when we have things that we believe to be true based off of evidence, how was that evidence created? What was the research on that? How is that research methodology designed? And we often will find that we learn these things from something that should be questioned and say, is it actually in alignment with what I think and what I value? And often include when we don't have enough time to really sit or don't give ourselves the opportunity, because in our society, sitting still and actually feeling is something that you have to be intentional about. And if you sit and you sit in your decisions and you feel it, like, oh, sometimes that feeling, you just want to like, I don't really want to sit there. Okay, then why? And who do I need here to sit with me to help me process so I can process through?
Yes.
Yeah. When I switched out of surgery, I started my next residency the next day because I did not want to sit there. I did not want to experience a grief. I had lost my military and my surgery and my ex-boyfriend all at the same time. I was like, who am I without all this? The pain of sitting still was too intense. So what did I do? Second residency. And then what happens? The burnout was even further down the next time it happened. So
yes, because we keep doing the same thing over and over again. If we don't address the underlying issue, it's just going to happen again. And that's why I've gone through burnout 3 times. And I joke about it now. I'm like, I'm triple certified in burnout, guys, because I've gone through it 3 times. But the third time was really scary because I went into a non-clinical role where I had all major holidays off. I was never on call. I didn't have to work weekends. I had 20 days of vacation, 10 days of CME time, 10 days of sick time. I got paid well. I was using my doctor brain. I got to go to every one of my kids' events, and I burned out again, and I was not happy again. So that's when I really started to say, I have got to figure this out. I can't keep doing this. And coaching allowed me to do that. So the question is, how do you prevent rock bottom? Mm-hmm. Well, even if you don't ever, if you're listening, and even if you never get coaching, which I highly recommend for everybody, and I am not a coach, and I am still recommending it for everybody. My husband and I agree it's a household expense for us now, and it's not even an expense, it's an investment, because when I invest in this, our entire family is better. And the way to prevent hitting rock bottom, though, my husband for years would just like, babe, you need to take some time for yourself. And I could not. I had immense guilt anytime I was away from my kids because I was already away from them for 12 to 16, 18 hours a day. And I was like, there's just no way. And so I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't eating enough. I definitely wasn't drinking enough water. I wonder if I was in renal failure at that time because I didn't have time to go to the bathroom. So I was not going to, and I was already drinking so much coffee and having to go to the bathroom and water. So, but all that to say, like all these craziness that, we have in our minds. And I say craziness because once you get to the point where you can see things more objectively, you realize that, man, that didn't make sense at all, and I wasn't seeing it. And so not mistaking your truth for the truth is so important. But back to preventing burnout, my husband told me over and over again, I needed time for myself. And it wasn't until I created that space that you're talking about that, and I started taking care of myself again. And I started to make sure I was eating and I was sleeping enough and I was exercising. Then it almost became like a snowball, which is why people are seeing me all around now. That snowball into a very positive direction happened because I made that decision that I am worth it and that for me to be the best mommy I can be and the best wife I can be, I have to start taking care of myself because this version of me that they're getting, I am not proud of. And like I always get emotional with these kind of things because when I was snapping at my kids a lot, and when my husband would have to say, Mommy's just tired. Here, I will take care of it, babe. Just go get ready for bed. It was like, that's some of the few moments that I had with my kids. And my husband was giving me the cues like, babe, this time, even though you're here, you're not here. And they're not seeing you, the real you. They're seeing this you. And you don't want them to see that you because that's not you. And it was mean. And I would yell at them. And these are the people I love most in my life. And they were getting the very worst of me. And so when you're aligned with your values and you listen to what your values are, it gives you the strength to start changing your direction. And for me, just the little things, just start listening to my husband when he asked me to just please go take a nap or please go to bed instead. And him helping me like that. And so a lot of us, a lot of physicians get divorced, right? And the key there, I think, again, is being open to hearing what people are telling us. And I'm not saying divorce is ever one party or another, but I'm just saying that when you're open to prioritizing the things that matter most, a marriage or kids or your parents or whatever it is, it really changes how you do things. And when you're letting fear drive everything, I'll lose my job, I won't make enough money, I won't be able to pay the mortgage, what if I don't find a better job, what if people see me as weak, what if people don't think I'm qualified enough, what if I never get that academic promotion? When we're in that space, then we'll never have what we really want. So we keep doing more, thinking we have to do more to be happy. And in reality, we need to reach out for the things that we really want that are going to make us happy.
And this is such an important point because this is the spiral that most people, I am a coach, and I'll say 100% of the females that come and work with me often are in that state of people pleasing and challenges setting boundaries because we are taught that we have to say yes, and to set boundaries is inappropriate, and it's seen as you're not a team player, and it's seen as you are not going to get promoted or you're not going to get paid as much. And in reality, Brene Brown was just here speaking in Houston, and she said at the core of mental toughness is self-compassion. And the people who are able to provide compassion the most and the most sustainable at their core is their capacity to set boundaries. And when she said these two things, I literally teared up because we have in our mind that if we take care of ourselves, it's selfish, and that if we set
Yes.
boundaries, it's going to come across as closed off and as cold. And we are taught that we have to sacrifice as much as possible and work as hard as possible, and that the person that works the hardest is the champion of success. But in reality, we need to be able to rest and recover. And we don't
Yep.
often hold that on a pedestal. We're like, that's not available to me, or we are just taught that we should ignore that aspect of ourselves, especially in medicine.
Yes. And I love Brené's work. And hearing it multiple different ways is very important, because as somebody who listens to Brené, who's in the depths of despair right now, would be like, easy for you to say, you're already made it big, or you already, but one of the points that I learned is a lack of self-compassion equals self-sabotage.
Wow. Let's marinate on that. Stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching.